Okay, let's unpack this. You know that feeling, right?
Which one?
Your phone buzzes another notification, grabbing for your attention. Then the internet, it just decides to crawl.
Oh, yeah. Definitely know that one.
Or your afternoon plans, poof, gone.
Yeah.
And then the classic, another meeting that, really could have just been an email.
Right. It feels like death by a thousand cuts sometimes.
Exactly. These little everyday things, these tiny stressors, they just add up and suddenly you're just drained, completely out of energy.
That's a really good way to describe it. And it's fascinating because these constant little irritations, they aren't just annoying. They actually trigger real physiological responses. They use up energy we need for other things.
Precisely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We've got some really interesting material here, excerpts from a chapter titled Let Them Theory.
Okay.
And our mission, basically, is to figure out how we can protect our own energy from all this, unnecessary stress. Stress from stuff we just can't control.
So focusing on that core idea, the let them theory,
Yeah, we're zeroing in on that.
makes sense. I mean, if you look at the bigger picture, it's really about reclaiming some personal power, isn't it?
How so?
Well, life feels chaotic sometimes, like it's pulling you in a million directions. So understanding how to consciously manage your internal response, that can be incredibly empowering.
Okay, so let's jump right in then. This chapter, it really starts by just acknowledging that, look, modern life, it's full of these little stressors.
Yeah, it doesn't shy away from that.
It's this constant stream of small annoyances and sometimes, let's be honest, just inconsiderate behavior from others.
Which brings up a really key question. Why do we let these things get to us so much? Why let them dictate how we feel inside?
Right, the text makes that point, getting worked up about stuff you can't change. It just drains your own power.
Absolutely.
And it asks you directly, why let a long queue ruin your day? Why let traffic put you in a foul mood? Why feel overwhelmed by interruptions all the time?
Or irritated by someone talking loudly on their phone right next to you.
Ugh, yes. Or taking unsolicited advice personally. Or getting internally furious at slow walkers. We've all been there.
These are those classic friction points. They really grind you down. The text gives that relatable example, the story about the garden center. What jumped out at you there?
Well, it was just so vivid. Standing in line, the cashier moving at, like it's a snail's pace, and that immediate feeling that agitation is starting to bubble up.
Impatience.
Yeah, you're watching the clock, thinking about everything else you need to do, and that automatic urge to like roll your eyes or sigh loudly, it's so familiar. It's like you need someone else to see how annoyed you are.
Right, seeking that validation.
Yeah.
But what was the shift in that moment? What changed?
And this is where it gets really interesting. Instead of doing any of that, there was this conscious choice, just internally saying, let them.
Okay.
And the effect, even though the cashier didn't speed up at all, was almost instant, like a softening inside, a release of that tension.
Exactly. That's the key insight, isn't it?
Yeah.
The situation outside didn't change, but the internal reaction did. And that's the core of this theory in action, protecting yourself from stress by changing that initial automatic response.
Which leads perfectly into that quote from the Greek philosopher Epictetus.
Oh yeah, the classic one.
It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. It really sums it up.
It's such a powerful reminder. We can't control everything that happens around us, but our real strength, our power, lies in choosing how we respond to it.
And the chapter points out that often our reactions to these daily stresses are just knee-jerk, automatic.
We get swept up.
Totally caught in the emotion. And before you know it, you've sent that text you regret or said something sharp or you're just sitting there fuming inside.
The airport example they use is perfect for this. Just think about it.
Oh, airports are the ultimate test?
Right. Check-in, security lines, delays, lost luggage, boarding chaos, connections, rental cars. It's like a minefield of stress, and most of it is completely out of your hands.
It really is. It's like a stress obstacle course. And the text mentions this fundamental law of human nature. You just cannot control what other people say, think, or do, period. Trying to. It just leads to frustration and wastes your energy.
So the focus has to be internal.
Exactly. Your own thoughts, your own words, your own actions. That's where your control lies. It's actually kind of freeing when you really accept that.
And to make this really concrete, the chapter tells that story about the person coughing on the plane. Can
Yeah.
you walk us through that one?
Yeah, this one feels painfully familiar. So you're on a plane, trying to work maybe, or just relax, and the person behind you is just coughing constantly, open-mouthed.
Oh, no.
Your first reaction, annoyance. Then maybe concern, right? Like, am I going to catch that?
That's
And your
right.
mind starts racing. Should I say something? Should I get the flight attendant involved? What do I do?
It's a classic uncontrollable stressor setting off all these internal alarms.
Yeah.
So what actually happened in this story?
Well, there was an attempt. A polite, quiet, "Excuse me, sir, would you mind covering your mouth?" A brief nod, maybe a moment of silence, and then back to the open mouth of coughing.
Yeah.
Just continued. Oh, lovely.
So of course the annoyance just ramps up. Forget working, forget relaxing, your mood is shot. We've all had that internal debate, haven't we? Politeness versus just wanting some peace.
It really shows how trying to control something you can't control just makes your own stress worse. Which brings us nicely to what's actually going on in our brains during all this.
Right.
The chapter brings in Dr. Aditi Nirukar. Here, she's a physician at Harvard Med School, wrote the 5 Resets, lots of expertise in stress.
Yeah, and her first statement just grabs you. Stress is a much bigger problem in your life than you realize.
Wow, okay.
And she lists all these effects: self-doubt, procrastination, burnout, doom scrolling, comparing yourself to others, trouble focusing, just general unhappiness, neglecting self-care.
Sounds familiar.
That loud inner critic, it's like she's reading my diary some days.
And what's really crucial, as Dr. Aditi points out, is that stress isn't just a vague feeling. It's a real physiological state happening in the brain. It actually changes how your brain functions. She talks about the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning, organizing, remembering, making good decisions, basically the CEO of your brain.
Right, the part that helps us function effectively. And what happens under stress?
That CEO gets sidelined. The stress response fires up, and control shifts to another part of the brain, the amygdala.
Okay.
Dr. Aditi describes it as this small almond-shaped thing, sometimes called the reptilian brain. It's where our basic stress response lives.
The fight, flight, or freeze response center.
Exactly. When the amygdala takes charge, the brain's priority becomes immediate survival. That's why we often make rash decisions or react impulsively when stressed.
So it's a contrast, isn't it? Prefrontal cortex means logical, thought-out responses. Amygdala means automatic, survival-driven reactions.
Right. But is that amygdala response always bad? I mean, isn't it sometimes necessary?
That's a great question. The amygdala is crucial for genuine emergencies, immediate physical threats. The issue is when it gets triggered by everyday stuff like a slow cashier or a cough, that's an overreaction.
Ah, okay. So it's about the appropriateness of the response to the trigger.
Precisely. And the key thing is, our bodies and brains aren't meant to stay in that high alert state for long periods. We need to be able to reset, to come back down.
But here's the kicker. According to Dr. Aditi's research, something like 7 out of 10 people are living in a state of chronic stress.
Wow, 70%.
Yeah. Constantly in that fight or flight mode, amygdala always sort of buzzing in the background.
And the impact of that long term.
Well, Dr. Aditi says when your brain is stuck in survival mode, all the important stuff, your goals, dreams, being your best self, patience, responding calmly, it all just kind of goes out the window.
That connects the dots, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Explains why we procrastinate on big projects, why it's hard to switch off from work and just relax, why we might feel disconnected in relationships, or why that inner critic gets so loud it stops us from even trying new things.
Totally. So dealing with stress isn't just a nice to have. The chapter really frames it as essential for living a good life, for reaching your potential.
Okay, so the million-dollar question then. How do we actually do that? How do we reset our brains?
Dr. Aditi says the first step is just understanding that stress works like a switch between those two brain modes, the thinking part and the reacting part. And crucially, you have the power to flip that switch back.
And that's where the let them theory fits in. There's a practical way to do that.
Exactly. It's framed as this, stress hack, a deliberate way to hit reset on that stress response, like finding an on-off switch or a little lever in your brain.
Okay, so walk me through the steps again. It sounds almost too simple. Does it work in really tough situations?
It is surprisingly simple, but the effect can be really profound. So the moment you feel that stress trigger, whatever it is, the first step is just to say silently to yourself, let them.
Let them.
Then just pause, take a beat. Next, you shift focus inward and say, let me. And as you say, let me, you take a conscious breath.
A deep breath.
Yeah, a deliberate breath. Then maybe another one. Really focus on slowing things down, calming your body, calming your brain. And in that space, you start to get back control. You reclaim your power.
It sounds simple, but I can see how interrupting that automatic reaction could be huge over time.
Absolutely, because you're stopping that immediate hijack by the amygdala. Let them acknowledges the external thing you can't control. Let me brings the focus back to you and your
Giving
response.
you space to choose.
Right. You get to choose how you respond instead of just reacting automatically. That means fewer rage texts, maybe fewer snapping at people you care about, even being more efficient because you're not agonizing over every little email or comment.
And that let me part helps you decide what's actually worth your
Yeah,
energy, right? Leading to more control.
totally. And it's interesting, Dr. Aditi confirms the science behind the breathing part, too. Deep breathing actually stimulates something called the vagus nerve.
Ah, yes, the mind-body connection.
Right. Stimulating that nerve helps calm the whole system down, counteracting the fight or flight thing. It's not just wishful thinking, there's physiology behind it.
So the breathing isn't just a pause. It's actively helping reset the stress.
Exactly. The let me plus the breath gives you that moment to choose an intentional response after you've calmed the initial surge. Like, let's take a work example. Say a colleague sends a really annoying email.
Okay, happens all the time.
The urge might be to fire back instantly, right? But let them acknowledge as, okay, I can't control their email tone or content.
Right, let them send the annoying email.
Then let me pause, breathe, maybe decide not to email back right away. Maybe a quick call is better. Or maybe just letting it go. You choose from a calmer place.
That makes sense. So let's go back to the coughing passenger. How does the theory apply there step by step?
Okay, so first, acknowledge reality. You can't magically stop someone coughing. So step one, let them cough. Accept it.
Okay, annoying but uncontrollable.
Then the shift. What can you control? Your own reaction, your own actions. This is where the responsibility piece comes in.
You're responsible for your own well-being, not the stranger's etiquette.
Exactly. You'd hope for basic decency, sure, but you can't force it. Trying to control the uncontrollable just ramps up your stress.
To the pragmatic ways.
Is to say, okay, let him cough, then immediately pivot. Let me focus on what I can do.
Right, let me protect myself or my peace.
Which, in that story, meant practical things. Pulling up a scarf over her nose and mouth, putting on headphones, turning up the music, simple actions within her control.
So let them accept the external reality. Let me focuses your energy on your controllable response.
Perfectly put. And Dr. Aditi has this great description she calls the let them theory, a sigh of relief for your stressed brain.
I like that.
Yeah, it helps you regain control over those spiraling anxious thoughts, letting your brain and body shift from just surviving back to actually thriving.
That's such a crucial distinction, because when we constantly let other people or external things stress us out, we're essentially giving away our power.
Right. Think about the old way, letting that coughing person ruin the whole flight, complaining about it later, spreading that negativity. It's a cycle.
This approach breaks that cycle.
Yeah, the core message really hits home. If you want to achieve your goals, be present, feel confident, be happier, you have to start letting external stuff cause unnecessary stress.
And it's not about pretending bad things don't happen or that things are always fair. They aren't.
No.
It's about choosing what you give your energy to and for how long. And Dr. Aditi's research backs this up. Protecting your energy positively impacts your mood, mindset, health, focus, even your ability to disconnect.
It's really empowering. I mean, the chapter even mentions people getting let them tattoos.
Oh, really? As a reminder.
Yeah, like a permanent reminder to protect their peace. That's how powerful this simple idea can feel.
That's pretty significant. And it makes sense. While the coughing example is pretty straightforward, the chapter rightly notes that applying this to bigger things, like ongoing issues at work, well, that's the next level, isn't it?
Definitely something to explore further.
Yeah.
So, wrapping up this first look at the let them theory, the main takeaway seems to be this. It's a really practical first step for managing daily stress. It works by shifting your focus off the external trigger and onto your internal response.
Exactly. It's about recognizing and using the control you do have over your internal state, which is often more than you think, especially compared to trying to control external events.
So maybe a thought to leave you with. Think about one specific thing, just one recurring annoyance or stressor in your own life.
Okay.
How might trying this out intentionally, saying, let them, pausing, then let me, and taking that breath, how might that shift things for you? How might it help you reclaim a little bit of that energy? Definitely seems like an experiment worth trying out in the next few days.